actually everybody in the plant. Everybody's uptight, everybody's worried.
A once mighty industry teeters on the verge of collapse.
We've seen problems papered over and tough choices kicked down the road, even as foreign competitors outpaced us. But we've reached the end of that road.
On News and Review today, hard times hit the auto industry. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. They call them the Big Three: General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. For years, they dominated the North American auto industry and provided millions of good jobs. But these days, the Big Three are just a shadow of what they once were, and their very survival hangs in the balance. For the Big Three automakers, it's been a long and painful decline. First, imports from countries like Japan and South Korea chipped away at their share of the market. Then came soaring oil prices that caused American consumers to shy away from bigger vehicles, like most of those made in Canada. And the global economic crisis was the final blow. Last fall, the automakers began to close plants and lay off thousands of workers.
Devastating. Corporate greed, that's all I gotta say, thanks.
In November, Ford and General Motors posted devastating losses and announced they were running out of money. And as the CBC's Havard Gould reports, Canadian workers braced for the worst.
The morning shift at a GM plant in Canada. People reporting for work, not knowing what to expect.
Everybody on the line and actually everybody in the plant. Everybody's uptight, everybody's worried.
By midday, it became clear the two biggest North American car makers, General Motors and Ford, are rapidly running out of time, both burning through billions of dollars and expected to be out of money in months.
Traditionally, when companies are out of cash, that's when you start talking bankruptcy.
We have the responsibility to do everything we can to make sure we build liquidity to get through what's an unprecedented crisis.
By the time the afternoon shift showed up in Oshawa, Ford was announcing 2,300 job cuts in North America. GM, 3,600.
It seems a lot dimmer than it did yesterday.
This crisis is so severe, no one believes that cuts alone will save car makers, which is why GM, Ford, and Chrysler are lobbying hard for help from Washington and Ottawa. The industry has been the backbone of manufacturing in North America for decades, supporting millions of jobs.
We've seen this before. The industry goes through these cycles, and yeah, true, this is a deep cycle, but again, I have every confidence that the industry will come back.
But analysts say the Detroit Three can't coast on past glories. The situation is dire.
What we're seeing is with the domestic manufacturers right now, the timeline is very short.
I'm extremely worried on what our auto industry is going to look like tomorrow, because every time I turn around, I'm getting another piece of bad news.
Just as the automakers are desperately playing for time. Havard Gould, CBC News, Toronto.
In December, General Motors and Chrysler received billions of dollars in emergency loans from the American government, but only on the condition that they undertake a massive restructuring to prove they're viable. And a day later, the Canadian and Ontario governments announced their own bailout plan, which also came with conditions. Here's the CBC's Aaron Saltzman.
Days before Christmas, an early present for Canada's auto industry.
Today, the Premier and I are announcing the fulfillment of Canada's commitment to provide 20% of the U.S. support package.
It works out to $4 billion Canadian, but this gift is expected to be paid back with interest. Ottawa is offering renewable loans paid to the Canadian subsidiaries of the American automakers. $3 billion to General Motors, $1 billion to Chrysler. Ford, with its stronger cash position, declined to be part of the package. Ontario, home to 400,000 auto industry-related jobs, is providing 1/3 of the cash.
Our choice is to passively preside over the demise of the industry in Canada, and observe its consolidation in the United States of America, or to act. We choose to act.
The money will be paid out in installments over the next 2 months, and as with the American bailout, it comes with significant strings attached.
Today's announcement is not a blank check.
Among the conditions, GM and Chrysler will have to accept limits on executive compensation. They must pay money owed to Canadian parts suppliers, provide weekly reports on their finances, and they have to report any business transaction worth more than $125 million. Not in the Canadian package, a specific demand for labor concessions. But the deal is contingent on the automakers ensuring long-term viability, in part by cutting costs.
The men and women on the line know that to preserve good long-term jobs for themselves, they're going to have to be part of the solution.
The Canadian Auto Workers Union, though, already signaling it's not interested in a pay cut.
I'll be arguing that our workers have already provided the company the most competitive collective agreement in comparison to who we compete with.
Wage cuts or not, even with the bailout, the government expects the Canadian auto industry to shrink and shed jobs. It's just hoping with this package, it won't disappear altogether. Aaron Saltzman, CBC News, Toronto.
But over the next 2 months, conditions continue to deteriorate. And by late February, General Motors Canada had doubled its request from $3 to at least $6 billion. The company promised no more plant shutdowns.
We would see no further GM plant closings in Canada. We've already planned for and achieved very significant reductions in our people. Some of those are being completed, but we don't see the need for much significant additional work beyond the ones that have already been contemplated.
But 2 weeks later, GM was casting doubts on its own survival. The company's auditor said there was substantial doubt the company could avoid bankruptcy protection. And a few days later, union leaders at GM Canada agreed to make major concessions.
I mean, the reality is, again, we are forced into bargaining, and the reality is we're part of the solution, and we got her done.
These concessions were something the federal government had made a condition for giving GM a loan. Workers would give up wage and pension increases, 1 week of time off, and an annual $1,700 bonus that would be used to fund retiree health costs. Workers and young retirees would also pay $30 a month for health benefits, with pensioners over 65 paying $15.
The alternatives of doing nothing would be much worse than what we did today.
But while GM and its workers were able to work out a deal, and so did Ford, the only Big Three automaker not asking for money, over at Chrysler, negotiations remained stuck in neutral. And Chrysler president Tom Lasorda warned that unless the company got more money and hefty wage concessions, it might pull out of Canada. As Havard Gould reports, Chrysler workers reacted angrily.
Tom Lasorda can kiss my ass.
The anger is real, as is the fear of a Canada without Chrysler. Emotions running wild in Windsor, Ontario, home of the company's flagship minivan plant.
So what's the feeling like in there?
It's absolute pandemonium. I've never seen anything like it.
If the plant closes, the city will be done.
Chrysler LLC cannot afford to manufacture.
The emotions are fueled by a sense of betrayal. For Tom Lasorda, the president of Chrysler, the man who said Chrysler's Canadian operations could be scrapped, is a Canadian and a Windsor native.
He's just selling us out like the rest of those corporate hacks.
When Lasorda came out with what he said there, it was kind of a kick in the gut.
A kick felt in Brampton, Ontario too, home to Chrysler's other Canadian assembly plant.
It's really scary to think about. My job could be gone within the next month. It's kind of emotional, actually.
But is the threat real? Chrysler wants government help, most importantly, billions of dollars in loans, and Chrysler is required to cut costs to qualify for that cash.
I think part of this is a bargaining ploy with respect to trying to get more concessions from the Canadian auto workers.
Will your members take $20 an hour less?
Absolutely not.
Union leaders say nothing will persuade them to give up more than GM workers did in their deal last week.
Because this crisis we're in today has nothing to do with wages and benefits. It's got to do with a global financial crisis. It's got to do with consumers not having the ability to get loans, and nobody's buying today.
But today, after the extraordinary threat to abandon Canada, some are wondering if Chrysler is in more desperate shape than it has revealed. Unlike GM and Ford, Chrysler is a privately held company, so official financial information doesn't regularly come down the line.
It's no small secret that things are very, very bad, so I don't think that they're just playing a game here. I think they're quite serious.
Serious enough to create fears that are undeniably real. Howard Gould, CBC News, Toronto.
Those fears became even more acute when in late March, President Barack Obama threatened to allow the U.S. auto industry to go bankrupt. He fired GM's boss, ordered Chrysler to merge with Italy's Fiat car company, and blasted GM and Chrysler executives for their failed leadership.
We've seen problems papered over and tough choices kicked down the road, even as foreign competitors outpaced us. Well, we've reached the end of that road.
The Canadian government also called GM and Chrysler's plans to restructure their operations not enough to make them viable. It offered them $4 billion in loans to tide them over while they restructure, including an emergency advance of $250 million to keep Chrysler afloat.
We very clearly, if the money had not been forwarded today, they would not have been able to meet payroll today or tomorrow. And so we were faced with this choice of a disorderly bankruptcy where, quite frankly, if liquidation would have been the result of that bankruptcy, whole plants or parts of plants could have been ripped up from Canadian soil, transferred to another country, India, China, who knows, and obviously the jobs would have gone with them.
But Clement also warned that if the companies can't restructure themselves, the Canadian government may allow them to go bankrupt. GM Canada must complete its restructuring plans by the end of May, Chrysler by the end of April. And that's News in Review. I'm Carla Robinson. Thanks for watching. They are big enough to make Canada an oil superpower, but there's a catch.
To say no to the tar sands. It's one of the dirtiest and most energy-intensive sources of oil on the face of the planet.
What we know is that oil sands creates a big carbon footprint.
And those challenges can be met through technology.
On News in Review today, the future of the oil sands. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. The oil sands of northern Alberta are the world's largest energy project. Thanks to them, Canada has replaced Saudi Arabia as the biggest supplier of oil to the United States. But despite this, a number of factors have combined to create a cloud of uncertainty over the future of the giant project. The first factor is the economy. Oil sands are deposits of bitumen, heavy black oil mixed with sand, clay, and water. Before it can be refined, the oil must be separated from this mixture and treated. This makes the process more expensive than extracting conventional oil. For a while, soaring oil prices fueled a boom in oil sands development. But last year, the price of oil began to tumble. The global economic crisis only made things worse by making it harder to get loans for new projects. As a result, some projects have been delayed or postponed. And as the CBC's Linda Calvert reports, new investments are becoming more of a gamble.
It looks like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's actually a brand spanking new oil sands operation. The owners say one of the most environmentally friendly yet.
This is the first one in Canada.
The glory and the gamble. They're taking a big chance during tough times for Canada's oil industry. The price of crude has tanked from a high of $147 US per barrel this summer to below 70. Combine that with a falling Canadian dollar and especially turmoil in world financial markets, the oil industry has gone from giddy up to whoa in just a few months. 4 big companies have announced they're scaling back, including Suncor, the world's second largest oil sands producer. And it's not just the major players. Small businesses like this family-run operation in Edmonton are hurting too. They produce parts for the oil industry like this drilling equipment. 2 months ago, they say they had more orders than they can handle. Now, the owner says business has dropped off by a third.
We've got a couple months of business still to produce, so we can work through that. But if we don't get more orders coming in now and within the next 3 weeks, then we'll feel that slowdown.
What we're seeing in the oil market is unprecedented.
This economist says if the oil patch is hurting, so too will the rest of Canada.
In general, Alberta's slowing down, or BC slowing down, or Saskatchewan slowing down. Those have been the big drivers of growth in this country. It certainly hasn't been Ontario and Quebec. And to the extent that the West slows down and Ontario and Quebec may well be in outright recession, we end up with a much, much weaker growth profile for 2009.
But it's not all gloomy. After all, this Fort McMurray project is going ahead. The companies involved admit they never would have gotten financing for this today.
Today, capital markets are essentially closed, right? So today, could you put together the debt and equity financing that Opti, in fact, put together for a startup company? The answer is no.
Some economists are convinced the price of oil will rise again soon because global demand in the future for oil is still expected to rise. So long-term projects like this one will do just fine. Linda Calvert, CBC News, Edmonton.
But the bad economy isn't the only challenge facing the oil sands. There is also an environmental one, and a political one that could prove devastating. The problem is that extracting oil from the sands isn't just a more expensive process than conventional drilling, it's also a lot messier. About 20% of the sands are excavated from giant open-pit mines that leave the land looking like a moonscape, while the rest is removed from deep deposits by pumping steam down to melt it, all of which produces large quantities of greenhouse gases, as well as enormous tailing ponds that can kill ducks and other animals and threaten water supplies to nearby communities. USA, keep out the Parsons, USA, keep out the Parsons. Because of that, the oil sands have been targeted by environmentalists in the U.S., and the stakes have been raised by the arrival of a new